That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of this interview, what I wanted to do is I told you how I talked to my group, my empath group, about our conversation where you were talking about when you were in China and the guy that you worked with said to breathe in people's energy.
Yeah.
Which was a really interesting way of putting it. I'd never heard it put that way quite explicitly. And some people were really triggered by it, by that idea. So I thought it would be awesome to have you talk more about, specifically about what that is.
Hell yeah, let's just jump right into it. I love it.
Yeah, I know, I'm excited. And I have a lot of good questions for you, too. So
fuck yeah.
So you know that, first of all, one of the things we talk about in my group is the difference between an empath needing protection and having discernment. And also, one of the videos I did was empaths need healing, not protection.
Yes.
How important it is to heal the emotional body.
Yes.
And there's certain things that we go over a lot. Like, I worked with so many empaths, and it seems like there's almost a glorification of unhealthy dynamics with empaths.
Yes.
Kind of perpetual martyr syndrome.
Yep.
And perpetual victim syndrome. And this, I'm so sensitive, and everybody comes to me, and I have to protect myself. And it just seems like a lot of empaths are really unhealthy, and I think it's simply because we haven't healed. And anyway, so yeah, I know you and I have talked about this a lot, but I want to hear what your opinion is, not just opinion, your experience with being highly sensitive, with being empathic, and with, I know you obviously went through a lot, and have had to learn how to thrive and be empowered as an empath, not just be protected. So, yeah.
So to start off. I think that first what needs to be said is that I have never met an empath in my life that does not suffer from serious boundary issues. So the real issue with us is not the empathicness in and of itself. It's the fact that we have serious problems with a sense of self. So first we should be talking about what healthy boundaries are. But I think our major issue that we have is that we take this gift and we assume that it has to come with the package of all these unhealthy things, right? When it really honestly doesn't.
Right.
And it could be argued that part of what gets people to the place where they are even empathic in the first place might be having poor boundaries because of the family dynamic that they were in when they were younger. So, for example, a little girl says, I don't want to do that, and mom says, oh, come on, be nice now. And so she learns to tear down her separation. She learns to tear down her definition of what is true for her or what's right for her versus what's right or true for other people, and that enables her to sense what everybody else is feeling because they don't sense the difference between themselves and other people.
Right.
So that could be one of those like contrasting experiences we opt into so that we can develop this empathic behavior. But at the same time, it's like our evolution is to maintain that connection with people where the lines are blurred and we perceive oneness more so than other people, but simultaneously where we're able to have a separate sense of self. Sort of like this is where I begin and end. So a lot of the issues with what to do to keep ourselves in a state of integrity as empaths, it has to do with this fact that we have no idea what a healthy boundary is. It's like we think of boundaries like fences because that's what boundary we know. And fences are really designed to keep other people out. When what I'd like to explain to people is that's not what a boundary is. A boundary doesn't have anything really to do with other people. It has to do with your sense of self. So it's almost like saying, this is what's true for me. This is what I like and don't want and don't like. This is my emotions. This is what I'm feeling. So we have to have a sense of that. And that's how we know where we start and where we end. So we're playing in this third dimension where we have this illusion, basically, of separateness. And it's benefiting us to have this illusion of separateness right now. And as long as we know it's an illusion, which we don't have to help empaths with that aspect of it, we know it's an illusion, we have to help empaths to feel safe to engage in that illusion sometimes. So rather than a boundary meaning this is what I'm going to let you do and not do to me, a boundary is about what I say yes to relative to myself. So when you're thinking about other people encroaching on you, I can say no to you, or I can say yes to me. So sometimes saying no to you is saying yes to me, whereas other times saying no to you is just that. It's me resisting you.
Right.
And that is going to do nothing but bring it closer, which is the number one argument against empaths protecting themselves is that it is not possible to focus on resisting something, which is what you're doing when you're protecting yourself. It's like a shield. When I bring up a shield, I'm protecting myself, which means I'm resisting something that's coming at me. So you can't focus at the idea of protection without simultaneously creating the idea of something that you need to protect yourself against.
Exactly. So what would you say against, so one of the biggest things is, I've talked about this a lot, and one of the biggest things I always get people saying back to me, especially people who are empathic and have other extrasensory abilities as well, is, well, the psychic realm is real and psychic attack is real, and there's a lot of really dangerous things out there, and to tell someone that they don't need to protect themselves is like giving them no armor against what could potentially be incredibly dangerous for them. So what would you say, especially in those sort of realms, like the psychic realm, what would you say to that?
I would say that it's very dangerous to engage in those types of thoughts, because as an empath, you are more acutely aware of the oneness that exists, but in the moment that you say you have to protect yourself against something, you're ignoring the fact that that aspect that is mirroring is actually yourself.
Exactly. Right.
So basically, we could concern ourselves all day long with trying to fix the reflection in the mirror, or we could try to fix whatever it is that is causing the reflection. So when empaths are trying to say, I want to protect myself against all the psychic attacks, they're essentially stepping in front of a mirror, seeing that they're a match to feeling like victims, and then they're trying to scrub the reflection clean without saying, okay, obviously, for me to be a match to psychic attack, I want you to think about it like this, like there's two magnets. For psychic attack to actually work, one side of you can be engaged. So let's say that this is a demon. Let's just pretend. So a demon basically is trying to get into you, or somebody else's energy is trying to get into you. It can't actually make the connection unless this side, kind of like a negative aspect of the magnet, is magnetized to the degree that it goes like this.
Right.
So in order, it doesn't matter. Honestly, I'd like to tell you this. It does not matter what anybody's focusing at you in this reality unless you are a match to it.
Exactly.
So really the question is, why am I a match to all these things coming at me in such an extreme way? And this is why the practice of completely opening yourself up to these energies is so powerful. Because when you do that, you're acknowledging to some degree that you are welcoming of it, so you're not resisting it anymore. So now we understand in this reality, whatever we resist persists, right? So if I resist that demon coming at me, I am now focusing on that demon coming at me. I'm making myself a match to it. If in that moment a demon's coming at me, I am opening myself up, and I'm actually able to do this, and this is not like something that I'm not wanting to do. So let's say that I'm actually capable of opening myself up and saying, I welcome and receive you as my teacher. I have a complete, like, my polarity basically is not negative positive. It can't connect. Right? I've just given them a vibration that they are not a match to.
Right.
So if anything wants to attack me, this is like a really, really ancient philosophy which even the martial artists understand, which is that if I am able to completely open myself up to a bullet, it cannot go off. I am now bending the time-space reality because I made myself not a match to the experience.
Right.
So we are, what I'm calling empaths to do is to, and which was the major like changing point for me in my life, was I'm calling empaths to create within themselves a vibration of such magnitude that they are able to be an ocean that absorbs everything, that everything is diluted in. So it's like, I mean, we, as empaths, our issue is that we visualize ourselves, because of the poor boundaries, as very, very small and very weak. And everyone's intruding on us. If we come into this space where we're saying, you know what, maybe I was given this ability for a reason. Maybe I am capable of transmuting everybody's vibrations. We're actually switching into a frequency that is so high that we can't be a match to experiencing the attack.
Right.
And I'm like the perfect prime example of this, because I wasn't the one that came up with this idea, regardless of understanding the way that the universe works. I was the person who at 17, 18, 19 was like, I can't go outside without my hoodie on because even that's just too much of energy coming in towards me. And I was like, I'm not cut out for this world. This is what most empaths are like, right? I'm too sensitive, and this world's not set up for sensitive people, so maybe I'm not meant to be here. That type of energy. So when I went to China originally, and this guy was watching me, and he's like, it makes no sense. You have to understand. He was basically talking through a translator. You have to understand that whenever you walk into a room with that vibration, you're a match to things like it. And I already understood that, but I didn't understand the correlation until he made me do it. So he says, see, right now, you're cowering as this person walks towards you. Do you feel the energy of that and what that might be a match to? Yeah, that makes sense. So then he takes me to this train station, and he says, stop doing that. When people walk in, I want you to think about yourself being big enough magnitude of breathing all of these energies in, which is what I did. And I expected the worst, right? But I'm in a place as an empath, which most of us are, which is like, it's not worth really living this way anyways, so why not? If I get annihilated by this practice, it's just going to be what I was planning on doing to myself anyway. So I go and I breathe it in, and it's like after a few breaths, I realize, oh my God, nothing's happening to me right now because of this. Because I have this open attitude, there's nothing really for these energies to hit against. Right. So I'm not feeling the impact. And that shifted absolutely everything in my life. I was actually able to go out in public. I stopped wearing hoods. It was just amazing. And I really realized that not only anytime that you're engaging in this idea of protection, are you buying into the illusion of self-other, right?
Right, yep.
You're also really making yourself a match to attack.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So what about, I know you've said there's still days that you feel more vulnerable than others. And what do you do? Do you have any practices or things that you do? What I would call discernment. If you know your vibration's low, for example,
yep.
Do you do certain things to make sure you're not in situations that make you more vulnerable?
Oh, yeah, hell yeah. But I don't do it. See, this is the difference. The difference is once you're conscious of yourself being a match to it, it's not about the other thing. So I'll tell you, actually, I just figured out why we did this. Okay. So the other day, right, it was like the day before Halloween, and I have a very hard time because of my childhood on Halloween. So I understand that just because that date is coming up and I've got body memory because of that date, I'm already in a lower kind of vibration. And so I went over to this friend's house, and we made this trip through the woods, and I had this moment. So she basically this friend of mine told me, there's this tree that's by my house that has bones that are tied up in the tree. Now that triggered me instantly, right? It's not something the friend was doing to hurt me, but that triggered me because of my associations with bones being tied in trees has to do with my childhood. And so at that moment, I had a choice. This is about poor boundaries versus good boundaries. The self-loving version of Teal could have said, I don't really want to go on a walk by that tree. Now, because I'm typical of a poor boundary empath, right, was like, I don't want to make this friend upset. I'm just going to go on the walk anyways. Mm-hmm. So I go on the walk, and sure enough, I'm in a low vibration the entire time I'm on that walk. Now, later that night, I ended up being a match to one of the worst psychic attacks that I have experienced in years.
Wow.
Yeah, super bad. Basically, I woke up and I was in complete sleep paralysis, and I was blended between the fourth and third dimension, and there was this enormous, a leathery red, it was a demon-looking thing on top of me. Now, panic, freak out, stand up, smudge the entire house with Palo Santo, right? And I'm like, what the hell is it about this that is destroying my reality? Maybe I can't hang out with that friend anymore. Maybe she's psychic attacking me, right? I go into the typical thing we do. Mm-hmm. Now, I sat down after calming myself down, decided to do what I can do, which is to go see what happened on a conscious level, so it's not happening in dream time and sleep time or in between. And what I discovered was quite interesting. It's that as I was walking, the place that we were walking actually made me a match to this thought form, which was created here in Park City by the people who used to be miners here. So the story goes like this. There was a miner who came in to prospect, and that used to be that they would pay a certain amount to go to a certain place and be able to dig there for a certain amount of days. Now, the place this guy wanted to dig was given to another prospector, and he basically thought that was a personal vendetta. So he got really angry about that personal vendetta, and he ended up going there and killed the guy, very brutally, and then he moved the body. And in the process, this body bled out, basically, so it had no more blood in it. And so when he moved it to this place and then left it, and then he skipped town, the people that then found the body, and it looked bloodless, like it had slash marks on its neck, they basically thought this has to, because a lot of them came from the East Coast, a lot of them thought this has to be like the Jersey Devil, right?
Oh, wow.
There has to be one of these things in Park City. So it became a belief in the group of people who were living here to such a degree that every inexplicable thing was blamed on this Park City version of the Jersey Devil. But if you understand thought form, people who believe in something enough, they can actually create a multidimensional thought form, which is what they thought it was. And that was what I picked up on my hike because of being in that victim vibration.
Oh, wow.
So I helped it to cross over and all this other stuff. Explain to it that they don't believe in you anymore. You don't have to exist anymore. So that's done. But the reason I'm telling you this story is because it's very easy. It would be easy for me to say I need to protect myself because there are all sorts of things that need to attack. That are going to attack me.
Right.
What it really is recognizing that I was already triggered before I went out, which is what made me a match to that experience. It was that connection of the magnet.
Exactly.
So it's about, what do I do next time? Okay, if I feel that feeling of this is not right for me, I get to honor that.
Exactly.
And so like really the majority of, I have a lot of practices which I could talk to you about, but the number one thing for me and for all empaths is learning how to freaking honor our feelings, which we don't do.
Yep. Exactly. I know for me that's one of the number one reasons whenever I've become a match to something that is like that, where I'm extremely triggered and then I feel like a victim or something happens in that way, or I get psychically attacked, it's because of that exact thing. I haven't honored my feelings and honored what I knew I was told or what I felt.
Yep.
And actually, one of the things that's really interesting you helped me a lot with, it was a few months ago, I remember I had sent you a text because I was feeling psychically attacked, and that never happens to me. Like, I've never really had that happen, but a particular person that I had been working with who was pretty mentally disturbed, I had triggered this person somehow, and I could feel it almost felt like penetration on my third eye. It was very intense. And I always could recognize this person's energy signature. And I know these things, but I remember texting you because it was so overwhelming and so shocking. I'd never experienced that before. And you said, you kind of gave me some suggestions with essential oils, but you said the main thing is to do a lot of work around around feeling, what's the word I'm looking for? Victimized.
Yep.
A little inner child work around feeling victimized. And I spent about 3 days just going into, like, recognizing what that feeling was. When is the first time I felt this way? Going within, asking my inner child what she needed, and realizing as I honored that, and as I went to her, and, like, I made it not about that person at all, and it completely went away, and I've not felt it since.
Yep.
So I think it's and it also makes you feel empowered because you don't feel like it's something out of your control. You realize, oh, okay, this is within me. I can go in. I can do, I can deal with this, rather than it being something scary out there that you have no control over. Exactly,
which is what we got to get away from as empaths, because we run the risk more than any other type of person of falling into that trap 100%.
Exactly.
So I have to be very careful with my vibration. That's what I've decided about myself over the years. Through really a lot of trial and error. Basically, because you're an empath, you run the risk of this ability going super, super south on you and attracting only bad feeling things, right? And that is not an objective picture of reality. We have to understand that. As empaths, the objective picture of reality is that we should be feeling equally as much as bad, if not more good than bad, because more good actually does exist in this universe. So if that's not the case, that means we have a vibration which makes us only a match to perceiving things which are negative. So I have to watch it with my vibration from the get-go. That means the minute that I wake up in the morning, here's my little resonance journal. See, I'm sitting on my bed. This is my positive aspects journal. Now, this thing has been like a godsend for me because it makes me a vibrational match to these things. So this thing might seem like a really super kind of trite self-help technique. But the reality is, if you're going to acknowledge the fact that we live in a universe that's governed by law of attraction, whatever vibration I get into dictates what I'm a match to. So when I wake up in the morning, I will take this out and write an entire page of things that feel good about right now. or today. It's just I have to focus on anything that causes me to feel emotionally good. So that's how I start the day. Now that ensures basically that I've started a snowball of attraction in my life where I get up and that my day starts going good. So when people come to me for help, it's not like they never come to me for help with negative things. What it is that I'm more a match to seeing the solutions than I am a match to seeing the problems. The problems are something I'm aware of, but it's not something that becomes mine. Make sense?
Right.
So I'm actually able to hold a much higher frequency for people who come to see me than I would otherwise have been. And I do this exercise when I wake up and when I go to sleep. So that's one example. It's like I have to, all empaths basically have to take the bull by the horns of their own vibration.
Right.
So it's not about what I'm doing with other people. It's not about what I'm allowing you to do or not do. It's about what I am doing to make sure that I am good and okay. And that's going to be different for every single one of us. And so it's like a lot of us who are empaths really need to learn to be divas. And being a diva is not about what I'm telling you to do or not do around me, right?
Right.
It's more about me honoring what I need. So if I'm sort of convinced that it's a diva thing that I have to take a bath in salt every single morning, that's what I have to do.
Right.
So yeah, and like we have to start experimenting with how good it feels and how less you need to protect yourself when you really set things up from the get-go. That means that you develop relationships with people that are completely and utterly open from the beginning. So when any issue comes up, you expose it completely. You and I were practicing this a little bit before you left California, where it was like, you remember how we were sitting down and I was telling you about this reception process where it feels really good for empaths to explain to each other what the motive for doing things is.
Yes.
Both the shadow aspects and the positive aspects. That enables us to feel safer, right?
Exactly.
So maybe that's something that you need, and that's in alignment with your own personal boundaries in your relationships, is to say, okay, so let's say that you, Amanda, gave me a present. I would say, why did you give me this present? And then the practice in our relationship is you saying the full truth about why you did that. So maybe, like part of it is, yeah, I really like to see you happy. The other part is maybe I felt really guilty because I didn't respond to your phone call.
Right.
Yeah, something like that. So, I mean,
that makes so much sense, and it just keeps everything in the open. And when someone is honest from the get-go about even the shadow side of what their motives are, it just helps. It makes it so there doesn't feel like there's any hidden agenda or something that's going to come up unexpectedly. You just kind of know it all on the table.
Completely. And so, not to be like totally weird and plug stuff in here, but I actually do have a really good resource for people who want to understand about boundaries and start figuring out about their boundaries and conceptualize what the hell that even means. Mm-hmm. I did a YouTube video that's called How to Have Healthy Boundaries in Ours. Well, maybe if you go to YouTube and you type in Teal Swan and then healthy boundaries, that video comes up basically. And in it, I'll explain what boundaries are, and I explain like questions you can ask yourself that helps you develop your own boundaries. And I explained something in that video which is like super crucial, I think, which I want to repeat here for people who are empathic, which is that you could get really complicated with all kinds of boundaries: religious boundaries, spiritual boundaries, personal boundaries, relationship boundaries, whatever they are, right? But you can sum it all up in this way. You always know what your boundaries are based on how you feel.
Right.
So I'm watching this program and I know that just causes this contraction in me. I don't like watching this movie. That is a personal boundary, right?
Right.
And so you will basically, the most important thing that you can possibly do is to care how you feel more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Which is why I think there's a correlation, at least in the empaths that I've worked with. It seems like I would say 95% of them have come from an abusive background, an abusive childhood. And some people argue, well, there's, empathic abilities are just something you're born with and it doesn't matter whether you've been abused. But I do think we can be trained from children to, I know with me, it's kind of a preemptive thing. If I can read everyone around me, I can preemptively prepare for whatever might happen or get out of any situation that might be uncomfortable. And so we're basically from a young age trained out of paying attention to how we feel and trained instead to tune into the environment around us.
Perfect. Could not have said that better if I tried. Because that is exactly the case with empaths. And I mean, empaths don't want to see themselves in that light often. So they'd rather just think that this is like a God-given gift that makes it so that they have to be, you know, in a state of martyrdom for the rest of their life.
Right.
But it's not the case. I mean, the reality is, let's like keep the baby and throw out the bathwater. The bathwater is, a lot of us developed these abilities because we had seriously dangerous people we had to read before they hurt us, or we were surrounded by people who we weren't loved unless we honored their boundaries and not ours. So,
exactly.
So it's like, once we acknowledge that, we are going to be able to get rid of the negative aspects of this and keep the positive aspects of it.
Right.
Which is really what we're all looking to do. Because, I mean, I don't want people to turn themselves off to it. And I hate that, too. People who say, can you switch it off? Like, that's some sort of virtue?
Right, exactly. Well, that's always been my issue when you read things about empaths. Mostly it almost makes it sound like either you have some sort of special God-given gift that sets you apart from other people, or you're defective and you need to learn how to turn it off. And I never could resonate with anything that was out there. Not that I've explored everyone that talks about empaths, but the things that have come into my awareness usually haven't been very helpful. So it's one of the things that I really resonated with you when you and I have talked about it, is just that sense of how important it is to really just connect with how you feel. And one of the things that I think, you know, there's been a lot of talk about light workers and the danger of believing there's a spiritual hierarchy, in the sense that, you know, it's the light versus dark and that whole battle. And I think that empaths can get so sucked into that because, especially if we've come from a background of abuse, we so badly want to feel like we have value. And to feel like, oh, we can be important. We can be important to someone. We can be on the light worker side. We can fight this battle. We can fight evil and all the people that hurt us. It kind of drums up that kind of, really the same aggressor, victim, savior mentality that is a cycle we've been in for so long. And I think really when we get out of that, we take 100% responsibility for how we feel and what's happened to us and our vibration. We get out of that whole cycle and we realize we are the aggressor, we are the victim, we are the savior. We don't, you know what I mean? We don't have to facilitate those roles in the external.
Oh, I love that. At my last workshop, I had the Christians up on stage, and we had a really good little conflict argument thing happen between us, where I was trying to explain to him that the devil and Jesus is the same person. Which is honest. Like, the higher that you progress through the spiritual levels, you realize that regardless of whether you're coming from this angle or this angle, it is all trying to get you to the same place.
Right.
Which is your own truth.
Right. Exactly. So would you say that really learning to thrive and be empowered with being sensitive is similar to doing shadow integration?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hell yes. I think it's a 1-2 step that we're missing, basically. Mm-hmm. And so when we have these negative aspects arise, rather than like instantly try to escape from it, you know, by trying to do whatever makes us feel positive instantly, right? Whenever that thing arises. So I've already got the negative up, right? We go into that. We learn from it because it has extremely valuable information to share with you. And you also realize the majority of these like painful things which keep coming up for you is in fact wounded children that are still like way back stuck in the past. You're like a skipping CD that just can't move forward. So when you assist those aspects of yourself back into an integrated state where you're bringing them into yourself and you're accepting that, there is no resistance to those states, and instantly it's like your vibration is like a buoy that was brought underwater. It instantly just boils back to the surface. And then the 1-2 step is first we're doing that. Second, now that we feel that relief, right? You feel the relief in association with actually allowing yourself to feel how you feel and explore how you feel to the negative. Once you feel the relief, that's your indication that you can go ahead and start creating your reality. That's the stuff most people already know how to do because there's enough teachers to sink a ship that are teaching that. The stuff like positive aspects journals, affirmations, things like that. That's the point to use that. We don't want to use that stuff to get away from the negative aspects that we feel. Because those are essentially hurt aspects of ourselves. And this is like, okay, classic empath issue is number one is self-abandonment. Mm-hmm. So self-abandonment, we could conceptualize of what that means, of course. Self-abandonment is like a great many things. But at its most primal level, self-abandonment happens when we want to escape from how we feel.
Right.
So you could imagine that when you're triggered, right, and you feel that feeling of like, I don't feel good, I don't feel significant. that's actually an indication that there's an unhealed aspect of yourself stuck in a childhood version of you who's like a 3-year-old you that's basically crying and making you feel insignificant in real time. So by you trying to skip out of it and be like, focus on a happy place, focus on a happy place, you're basically trying to escape from a 3-year-old child.
Right.
Which is like the real gift of shadow work is not that like you're so powerful that you can finally face the demons. Because you realize most of these demons are like tiny children who are begging you to pick them up out of the damn crib.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And once you do that, you develop, like, it's not scary anymore.
Yep.
These things are like ghosts that are projected from frightened children. And then you develop this loving vibration towards yourself. So when you start to feel that way, you don't instantly abandon yourself by going in the opposite direction of how you actually feel and the truth of yourself right now. And that's like a major step when it comes to developing boundaries.
Exactly. And there's something incredibly empowering about, I know for me as an empath, and one of the things I teach is to just check in constantly with how you feel.
Yes.
How do I feel? And then I connect with it and I say, that's okay. It's okay. I will no longer abandon myself in how I feel.
Exactly.
And that...
Yeah, so let's do it. We're doing a quote right now, which all empaths need to, like, keep this. Put it deep in your cerebellum, okay?
Seriously.
The quote is, the problem is not how you feel, the problem is you do not feel safe to feel how you feel.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And when you open that and allow yourself to feel what you feel and make it safe for yourself, at least in my experience, that's changed everything. I think I've had more growth in the last year when I made a commitment to, I will no longer abandon myself in how I feel, than I ever did with 8 years of therapy prior to that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like we also need to let ourselves go in graduated steps. So we need to be okay with what is. Mm-hmm. And that means being super honest with ourselves. So, like, I watch a lot of empaths when, let's say, they feel that psychic attack or something from somebody. They feel that negative energy. They'll instantly go to a place either where they make an enemy of that person, or they're like, no, I can completely love and accept where they are right now. And that's lying to yourself, right. You know? I'm not right there. Maybe I hate her for that. I hate she's doing that to me right now, right? That's a valid feeling that we need to be able to admit to, because unless we're able to admit to that and get angry about it and move through that with ourselves, we're never going to get to the high enlightened place where we are able to say, I can completely understand why she did that. Exactly. And really mean it. Mm-hmm. Not like he's saying it because it's some sort of spiritual clothing that we are currently putting on to hide the way we really feel.
Exactly. Well, and I think, again, that goes back to the whole light worker mentality. It tends to breed that type of, you cut off a huge part of your emotional field. Like, there's some emotions that are acceptable and a lot of them that are not. And so you only play in the ones that are acceptable, but really you're just denying how you feel, and you're suppressing. Which is
just the exact same thing that happened to us when we were children. Exactly. We weren't allowed to feel how we felt. There were some emotions which were acceptable, some which were unacceptable, and so we did whatever we could to suppress and deny the aspects that were unsavory to everyone else around us.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling cycle with empaths. Right. Basically, we are like doomed because of these like abilities we developed / gifts. Unless we really take the bull by the horns of this type of situation, we are doomed to repeat the relationship we had with our parents with the universe itself.
Yep.
That's all that changes. It's just like, we just project that relationship over the top of the universe.
Yep.
And it's a painful, super painful life.
Right.
Basically.
So what would you say the life looks like? Because this is what I'm really interested in. The life of an empowered empath looks like, because one of what I think is that being an empathic person or being highly sensitive can feel like a superpower if you know how to utilize emotions.
I would say that the life of an enlightened empath, someone who's like really in an empowered state, would be what your archetypal vision of someone like Jesus is. And I know that some people have resistance to him. I mean, if that's not what you like, think about Buddha. So, but the reason that I'm using the example of Jesus is because not only is it relatable to most people in the Western world, but there are these images, these really classic images with him, where he's able to walk in and kneel down at the foot of all these lepers and be able to not only completely understand where they are and how they feel, and because of that, say whatever it is like the perfect thing to say to get them into a higher vibration. He also has absolutely no fear. Now, the highest version of an empath is a person that is absolutely fearless to anything. That's the person who can go into a place that is completely destroyed by leprosy and feel absolutely no attack or fear that he's going to come down with that particular disease.
I love that. Fearlessness.
Now, so try this on for size. And this is where a lot of people are going to be able to feel the sort of out of alignmentness of protection. What did Jesus be like who walked in there, who had himself covered in like hazmat material to work with people who had leprosy?
Right.
That is what we are doing when we're trying to protect ourselves from people as empaths.
Wow, that's a really good visual.
What Jesus did was to create a vibration himself that was so high and so strong that it was not a match to the very conditions which he was assisting with. Because when he walks into the room, instead of seeing everything that's wrong and worrying that that's going to come on to him, he saw what was right about them and helped people line up with that.
Exactly.
Look, you are eternal beings. Look, you are not sinners. Look, you are always eternal and beautiful in the eyes of God. To express that message helps a person in that low vibration match that higher vibration. And that's why he was able to perform the miracles he was able to perform.
Right. What do you think, I mean, I know what the classic Bible versions say, but what do you think he really innately knew about himself that allowed him to do that?
I think he knew back then what all these New Age teachers are now starting to teach, basically thousands of years after the fact. See, if you understand that language, it gets very complicated because a lot of the translations lost the original message. For example, in the culture that he was first living in that language, the very word son means creation. So the problem there is that we have interpreted what he was saying as I am the literal only son of God, when in reality that very word could have meant I am the creation of God, therefore I am not separate from God, which is the same damn thing everybody's saying nowadays in the New Age, which is that you are an extension of God, and as such you are an eternal creator, which is why you can turn water into wine. So I feel like what was really going on with him was that he had mastered this concept within the universe, same as Buddha, that you are absolutely indivisible from this thing that you keep praying to. And because of that, the amount of power that you have, and this is not power over other people, it is power to dictate what your life looks like, makes it so that you can never be a victim to any person or any condition.
Right.
And that love is the absolute truth of your existence. That love is God, and therefore love is you. And if you tap into that, you have tapped into everything you need to know about yourself. That's what I think.
I love it. Yeah, I think you're dead on with that. It definitely resonates.
But he was an empath. Like, if you want me to tell you, if you look at all these archetypal figures throughout history that have all had these extrasensory abilities, if you want to look at the cardinal empath was him.
Yeah.
Buddha was more the clairvoyant.
Right.
Jesus was the empath.
I like that. I never really thought about it like that, but yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
So is there anything else you feel like we need to cover on this topic of being empathic?
Just that I feel like those of us that are empaths, we really need to learn how to step into our power and quit forgetting that we have it.
Yes.
And the reality is, regardless of whether you developed these abilities like because of some negative circumstance in your childhood or not, it's still a gift and a skill that you developed. And if you have a gift or a skill, that probably means you're meant to use them. And if you're given a gift like that, you probably have the capability of doing exactly what I described, where you walk into a circumstance absolutely unafraid of what's going to come at you because you know that your heart can contain it.
I love that. Super powerful stuff. It's so encouraging to hear people speak about empaths from an empowering point of view rather than, protect yourselves, you're vulnerable. So.
Well, does that feel in alignment? I mean, we need to ask ourselves even about that. Does that feel like it's true?
Right, it doesn't. It doesn't feel like it's true. Yeah. Well, I'm so happy that we were able to talk about this. I know we were going to do it in person, but then our schedules kind of mixed up. But thank you so much for doing this. I think this is going to be really good. I'll share it publicly as well. I'll put it in my group, and then you can share it if you want to, because I think it'll speak to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so too. There's a lot of empaths that need a hell of a lot of help with how to live.
Exactly.
And it would be fun sometime if we did a workshop, I think, because obviously this is just like the skim surface
Exactly.
Whereas it's like, I feel like we need to develop ways, you know, like actual, tangible ways that we can, as empaths, feel that empowerment in our, you know, like I would like to actually do, this is just an idea I'm bouncing off of you, but it'd be fun to do workshops where we had examples of how to approach people, where what an empath would normally do, which is probably out of alignment with what we do instead, which will help us to come into alignment.
I love that. It's such a, I mean, it's so needed. I just started my group online, which is a free group on Facebook, and every single day I have so many people sign up for that group, people sign up for my class, because people are just desperate to hear something different. Like, not just how do you protect yourself, but how can we be empowered? Yeah. How can we be in alignment? How can we do I love your example about Jesus. Like, how can we enter into situations fearlessly? Yes. We should totally do a workshop. I think it would be huge.
I'll do it.
Let's do it. I like it. All right, let's email about that, and we'll keep that going.